Coming up on the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast, we discuss 5 must-have players in the 5th and 6th round, the biggest steals going in the middle of your drafts. We're going to discuss players like Alvin Kamara, who once upon a time was an RB1. Can he return to those levels? We're going to break down that, all that, and more on the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast, starting right now. And to help me break down the must-haves is the must-have Razzball fantasy analyst. That's Matthew Stiles. You go follow him at Stiles08 on Twitter. Mateo, what's going on, my friend?
I bet you say that to all the boys. The must-have, right? You say it to Sky. You say it to everybody, don't you?
I call Sky a bus. I'm like, Sky. I only get Sky on for the bus shows so I can make fun of him and call him a bus. But no, Sky's my takeaways guy. I have slots for everyone, you know?
But
Gladys is my league winner, so I got to give her that. You're a must-have, but she's the league winner. But
yeah,
everybody has their role.
I think you're starting to sell Sky on Justin Fields. You're never going to get there with me, but I
shouldn't have to. I shouldn't have to. He's going to go erupt. He's going to erupt. If anybody goes look at my top 150, you'll know I basically have manipulated to where you're never going to get one of the top 3 guys, but you'll get Justin Fields every 4. And I promise you that it is going to be the best decision of your fantasy season, drafting Justin Fields in round 4. That's a flag play. That's another episode, Matt, okay? That's not what we're talking about today. You're not supposed to get me all excited to talk about Justin Fields. Today's episode is about must-have players around in the 5th and 6th round. So essentially, we've been doing a must-have running back, wide receiver, quarterback. We've been doing a must-have player series by round over the last few weeks. Now, Matt, once you get to this 5th or 6th round, have you kind of noticed any themes, any players you're targeting before we dive into my top 5 must-have players?
So you're going to have one that's I'm seeing going a little bit earlier, your guy for the Giants, but there's 2 of them out of the list that you're going to show that I have targeted probably 1 and 5 and 1 and 6, and I'd be happy to nab either one of them in a draft. Now, mind you, the beginning, the first 4 rounds have to go the way you want for these guys to make sense, but they're almost plug and play every week, and I think that they fit with at least the roster construction that I go into the draft wanting to have. So yeah, I love 2 of these guys. I can be sold on your guy from the Giants, and the other 2 we can bat back and forth like a pickleball match. See, there's our new sport.
Look at that, babe. Loose sport on Razzball. Yeah. Check out the pickleball tab on razzball.com. All right, let's get into it. Let's talk about our first must-have player. And this one, I got to admit, we have to let the dust settle a little bit more on Alvin Kamara to see where he really goes. His ADP is still very suppressed, and I don't think you're going to get a lot of Alvin Kamara at ADP 72. That's not what I'm saying here. But I do want to bring up Alvin Kamara for a couple of reasons. One, where the rank is, 49, that's right around the 4 or 5 turn. And so I do think there's going to be people out there that are going to talk about Alvin Kamara as a 3rd round pick now because he's got the suspension, maybe an early 4th round pick per se. And so I just want to I wanted to think about, is that a good thing? Should we actually evaluate him that way? But let's kind of talk about why Kamara is clearly a very good value pick today and how aggressive we should get on him. First off, played 10 of 12 snaps with Derek Carr. I do think because of the suspension, they might give him a little more preseason action they have done in the past. But it's great to see that he was on the field almost every single play with Derek Carr, saw 5 touches in that first preseason action. Also, over the last 2 seasons, we kind of saw Alvin Kamara's efficiency suppressed. And a lot of that has to do with the carousel at quarterback. It was Andy Dalton, Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill. They also threw in Trevor a couple games. And so if you look at his career averages on fantasy points per rush attempts and fantasy points per reception, essentially how many fantasy points he gets when he touches the football, they are so much lower than his career averages. And I just feel like where Derek Carr is going to help him is, one, Derek Carr will probably increase the pass volume for the team as a whole, and we see that in the stats versus what they had with Andy Dalton. And the other is the red zone work. Now, I understand goal line work probably will be Jamal Williams, but red zone work will still offer Alvin Kamara some upside. So if you look at the red zone carries, in 2022, they only had 25 as a team. I mean, Alvin Kamara only had 25 red zone carries. My apologies. 2 touchdowns. That is absurd. Okay, that they should have been closer to 6 based on the averages of a player in the red zone. So right there, you could see some regression back to the mean for Alvin Kamara. The other aspect of this, though, is Derek Carr. On average, those teams under Derek Carr averaged 69 red zone carries in 2018 through 2021 when they were under John Gruden. And the Saints in 2022 as a team, as a whole, only had 51. So that's 18 more red zone carries that the Raiders had with Derek Carr in the John Gruden system, which kind of mirrors Pete Carmichael and what the Saints run. That's a significant number. And if Alvin Kamara is getting a majority of those, at least half, which we've seen over the last few years, that's 9 red zone carries more this season. And you're looking at probably 2 to 3 more touchdowns on top of where he's supposed to regress last year. The other is RB targets. Last season, there was only 107 RB targets for the Saints. The Raiders as a whole, the Raiders on average under Derek Carr in the same time frame, 127. So 20 more targets to the running backs. Derek Carr will get more volume overall, but he also does check down to his running backs a decent amount. On top of that, with the red zone work, I love Alvin Kamara to bounce back. Also, the other aspect of this too, I just did an RB analysis on wins versus losses. And Alvin Kamara, I got to tell you, this was a really fun exercise because there was running backs who I thought were better in wins than losses, and it ended up not being true. Nick Chubb is a prime example of that. Nick Chubb is just as good in wins as losses. Alvin Kamara averages 5 points per game less in losses. So what does that mean? Well, if the Saints are better under Derek Carr, that means more wins, more points for Kamara. So I do like him a lot. I just don't know if I'll ever get to the 3rd round, maybe early 4th. But Matt, what's your thoughts on Kamara? How aggressive are you getting on him knowing his 3-game suspension?
I hope that people read into the 3-game suspension as feeling longer, right? I wrote a little bit about recency bias and responded to one of Derek's posts on X, right? Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it today. And it was recency bias. So Kamara's been in the news lately. I think guys like Dalvin Cook are going to move up because of the news. Zeke's going to move up. Ramondre's going to move down. And I'm hoping that Kamara is in the bad news factory for all of that, and he continues to move down. My goal would be to get him in the middle of 5. I don't think I will, but I don't know that I'm willing to pay up in the 4th, depending on where I've already drafted. But middle 5 is where I'd love to see him, and I wouldn't hesitate. So, and I think I'm drafting in the 8 spot in my big home league, and that would be ideal if I could get him at 5'8". I don't think he'll be there that long, unless people have that recency bias. They remember the news. Oh, he's suspended. 3 games is going to cost me X amount of points, and I just can't afford to do it. So, or if running backs are plentiful in the 3rd and 4th, if people go wide receiver heavy or they load up on quarterbacks and those tight ends, that maybe Kamara slips. But that's where I would take him in the middle of 5 because I don't think I'm going to pay up for him in the middle of 4.
Quick question for you, Matt. Would you rather have Alvin Kamara or Alexander Mattison? That's a typo. Obviously, Mattison is only a nickname that JB would give Alexander Mattison. But quick thoughts, Mattison or Kamara?
At the price, Kamara.
Yeah. All right. What about straight up, though?
I like Kamara's hands better. And Mattison is playing in an offense where he is certainly far from the 1st or 2nd and possibly 3rd option. In the passing game, right? I can see Kamara another 50 catches easy. And he looked, it's preseason, but you mentioned it. He looked pretty good, and Derek Carr gave him the football. I think Kamara is going to come and try to live up to previous Alvin Kamara, and he's going to keep his mouth shut. He's going to want to stay out of the news and just play football hard. And like you said, the 4 quarterbacks he played with last year, you add them together, they're not Derek Carr. Not that Derek Carr is a world beater, but he's certainly better than those 4.
Yeah, I just think there's somewhere in the middle, right? Because the Drew Brees years with Alvin Kamara, I don't think people really take into the fact that it was a perfect storm. Outside of Michael Thomas, they had no weapons. And so Alvin Kamara was getting 100 targets, which is unheard of for running backs. And it was a perfect storm. And then Mark Ingram gets traded. Then there was a little bit of a lull where he started getting more carries too. Jamal Williams will be the goal line back most likely. And I like Derek Carr, but he's not Drew Brees when it comes to passing to running back. So there's a middle ground that I like, but you also have to factor in that 3 games. This is where I have him at 49 right now. All right, let's jump down to the next one. This comes as no surprise. If you follow this show and you don't know that I love James Conner, then welcome to the show. I'm Bobby. I'm your host of the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel. That's my co-host, Matthew Stiles. Go follow Matt Stiles08 on Twitter. He's fantastic follow. All right, so with James Conner, I think the first thing we have to address is Drew Petzing. He's the new OC. There's a lot of change there. But the great thing with Drew Petzing, he has proven that he's been a part of coaching staffs under Kevin Stefanski and with the Minnesota Vikings that has featured an RB1. I mean, look at Nick Chubb. Awesome for fantasy football. He's been an absolute workhorse. Before that, it was guys like Dalvin Cook with the Minnesota Vikings. They were on that coaching staff. Adrian Peterson, if you want to go back further. If you just look at the RB1s, and this includes, by the way, Jerick McKinnon and Latavius Murray seasons with these guys. So since 2015, Drew Petzing's coaching staffs, when he's been on the staff, the RB1 averages 266 carries and 44 targets for 310 opportunities. That's top 10 in the NFL last season. So elite usage. The other thing I love about James Conner is that when I talk about the wins versus losses analysis, he was one of the guys in the top 20 that is not affected by wins and losses. His points per game over the last 3 seasons, he averaged 16.2 PPR points per game in wins and 16.8 in losses. So the potential of the team being bad with Kyler Murray coming back from injury should not bother people because he's a good in pass pro and he's also utilized in the passing game. And the final thing is, if Kyler Murray sits, the question is he good with Colt McCoy? With Colt McCoy last season, he averaged 16.2 carries, 5.2 targets per game, 21.3 opportunities, 19.6 PPR points per game, and he was the RB3. So I think he's fine with Colt McCoy, but that's why I'm high on Conner. He's like an RB dead zone guy that we typically avoid that I'll attack this year. Matt, your thoughts? Are you taking Conner closer to ADP or at my rank?
So you sold me, right? Rarely happens that we agree, but you've talked me into it. Almost like I felt like I was a James Conner hostage, right? That you just kept drilling it into me over and over. And the last time I texted you, I said, "Hey, I'm about to get James Conner in this Razzball. And I was excited. Had my Razzball shirt on. I'm drafting here, and he goes right in front of me. So then I felt like I have to maybe reach to get him. But I heard a neat statistic today. Do you want your nail in the James Conner coffin that makes you draft him everywhere? Are you ready?
I'm already 6 feet under, but go for it.
3 of the last 5 years, top 10 fantasy running back, James Conner.
Simple.
That's it.
That's
just move on.
I throw around a bunch of crazy number. Matt just gets right to the point. How many fantasy points does this guy have? And he's been dominant the last 3 to 5 years. All right, we're in. All right, let's jump down to the next one. And so I want to make sure that when we talk about my guys, I really started kind of ironing that out a little bit. And I am huge on Dallas Goedert. I could easily put Dallas Goedert in here. And I actually have drafted Dallas Goedert more than Darren Waller. But my number one stack this season, and it's going to be on this show today, is going to be Darren Waller and Daniel Jones. So the first thing we have to address with Darren Waller is his health. Obviously, been kind of in and out of the lineup the last year and a half or so, but Sports Injury Central has him at a 91%. And already in camp, he's dominating. The best part, too, is he's been playing in camp, on the field, and he's been the top option for Daniel Jones. Now, the question is Brian Daboll good for tight ends? Well, first off, Brian Daboll's a former tight ends coach with the Patriots. So that's always good. When you're a position coach and you get promoted to OC at some point, it's good that you like tight ends. He was a tight ends coach for the New England Patriots. In 2010, when he was an OC for the Cleveland Browns, his number one option that season was Ben Watson. So Brian Daboll runs a type of scheme where you don't need a wide receiver 1. You could have the tight end to be the number 1 option. Of course, he comes from New England, by the way, who had Rob Gronkowski dominating for a half a decade. So there's that as well. That season, but Ben Watson, 68 receptions, 736 yards, 3 touchdowns, the tight end 9 in fantasy. In 2021, Dawson Knox, tight end 10 in fantasy, 9 touchdown catches. So he was featured there. Next question I have to ask is Darren Waller's getting a little bit older. Well, tight ends are different, right? Age 31 seasons. Here's a notable one. Travis Kelce, career best 20.8 PPR points per game at age 31. So age isn't really a factor. The other thing I love about Darren Waller, he's a proven number 1 option. In 2020, he had 145 targets, 17.5 PPR points per game. He's proven that he can handle being the number 1 option on an offense. And finally, today, he's my tight end 4 in my ranks. I have him at 50th overall, 8 spots higher than ADP. And honestly, I think I got to get him higher because I'm going to have to make him a must-have player. So quick thoughts, Matt. Darren Waller, are you getting aggressive on him in 2023?
So I have to look at my my fantasy host bingo card, and I actually don't have Ben Watson. So he's not on my list. I can't check him off. So maybe Sky or Derek or Gladys has Ben Watson on their bingo card.
I should send you guys all cards, bingo cards. And then whenever I say a random name, you guys got to check it off. I do say so. I had a Asante Shanko a few months ago, so things get weird from time to time.
I don't think we'll see an Asante Samuel because we don't talk a lot of defense. But, yeah. So I'm not going to own Waller. We talked about this probably 2 weeks ago. You and I did. We went back and forth, mainly because I'm not going to pay up at tight end. But to me, this is the poor man's Travis Kelce. And I say that because it doesn't matter what wide receivers exist in Kansas City. He's just going to be a monster. With the Giants, they have 17 wide receiver 2.5s, right? So Isaiah Hodgins, a nice player. Wan'Dale Robinson, nice player, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Kenny Golladay, nice player, just hasn't done it. But if Waller truly suits up and Daniel Jones treats him like Mahomes treats Kelce, Waller's going to have another career year. With that, I'm probably not going to pay up, especially not at 50. And I'd be happy with Evan Ingram, Goddard later. So I love the guy. I just don't see me drafting him that high. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I don't see me going that high.
I'm in. Let's jump to the next guy. Of course, it ties perfectly into this. And before I get into this, I want to make sure we promote something, but we're very excited this season. Once again, we're going to be doing our Sunday Live Start Sit show every single Sunday, starting at 10 a.m. Eastern up till kickoff. Join myself, Matt, Sky, the rest of the team, Derek, Gladys, will all be on to talk about start sits, key injuries, everything you need to know up until kickoff. So make sure you join the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel and jump on with us if you have start sit questions. We're excited. Week 1 is just around the corner. All right, let's jump into our next one. Go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say, you come for the analysis, you stay for the laughs.
Oh, tell you. And
we're punch drunk about 3 minutes before kickoff.
Oh, it's wild. And at 7 a.m. in my time to start. So at 7 a.m., I'm like 3 coffees in, just trying to make sentences happen. All right, this one.
Didn't we had a bourbon sighting last year?
Oh, we did. Yeah, there was beers. Yeah. I've done it all.
Everything.
Yeah, no, 8 a.m. beer that's healthy. Anyway, let's not get into my issues. It's must have. It's not must have issues. It's must have players. All right, so let's get into this. Daniel Jones is the one player that is my flag plant quarterback this season. I am all in on him, and it really starts with Brian Daboll and the progression that we've already oversaw with Josh Allen. And a lot of people are going to say, well, he's not Josh Allen. But the question is, was Josh Allen really Josh Allen until he got legit weapons? So I took a look at it. So I wanted to take a look at side by side Josh Allen the year before. So his second season in the system with Brian Daboll, his second year in the NFL, and then also comparing that to Daniel Jones last year. All right. Now, you could make arguments, well, Josh Allen was only his second year, but you could also make the argument it was Daniel Jones' first year in the system. Josh Allen was also in the system the year prior, so you can make an argument either way. But I wanted to look at them side by side because prior to the Stephon Diggs signing, they had John Brown and Cole Beasley. You can make an argument that John Brown and Cole Beasley are better than anything the Giants had last year at receiver. You could, outside of Saquon Barkley. So if you look at them side by side, yards, passing yards, for example, Josh Allen had 3,089. Daniel Jones, 3,200. Touchdowns, 20 for Allen, 15 for Daniel Jones. Okay? A little bit better, Josh Allen. Rushing attempts, 109 for 510 yards and 9 touchdowns. That's for Josh Allen. Daniel Jones, 120, 708 yards and 7 touchdowns. So if you add up all the stats, just from a fantasy perspective, Josh Allen that season averaged 20.7 6 point per passing touchdown league points. Daniel Jones averaged 20.1. Like 0.6 difference right there. Very close. Josh Allen the next season jumped to 29.6. Made a huge jump. But we already started seeing Daniel Jones taking the next step, okay? So if you just look at after the bye last year, They started giving him more. They were throwing a little bit more. Daniel Jones getting more aggressive. He was 17-game pace after the bye, was 380 fantasy points. That would have been QB5 last year. Okay, and 6 points per passing touchdown. Better than Geno was last year overall. So I think we already kind of saw the improvements in the second half. And I know Darren Waller isn't Stephon Diggs, and I get that. But we're also not drafting Daniel Jones to be the QB1, 29 fantasy points that Josh Allen ended up being. So that's why I think he is a difference maker. I have him right now with Justin Herbert, Dak Prescott in that range and right behind Trevor Lawrence. But I think I might need to bump him up because I just think the rushing upside is too big. But Matt, your thoughts? Are you closer to my rank or are you closer to ADP on Daniel Jones?
So are you saying you're going to pass on the big name quarterbacks all the way down to Fields?
How I have my top 150 is I have Josh Allen number 1, and I have him at the back of the third round. If Josh Allen falls to the back of the third round, I'll take him. But then after that, I have Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, and Joe Burrow all back-to-back in round 4. So that's when I'll take one of the elite quarterbacks. If they go sooner, I'm not touching them. After that, it gets a little hairy. Lamar Jackson is a couple spots behind them, but I'm way behind Lamar Jackson, and then it goes to Trevor Lawrence. So I would say it depends on how the draft goes. I would say I'd most likely have Justin Fields in round 4, and my number 2 quarterback is going to be Daniel Jones in this range.
Yeah, I'm not me. I like what you said. I like the numbers. I like the stats. I like the rah-rah Giants pom-poms out. But I'd much rather have Burrow or Trevor Lawrence. And even for Sky Guasco, I'd rather have Justin Herbert. I think Herbert's going to have a career year. I think this is his coming out party, even though he's already had one. I think this is going to be the big one with those receivers that he's got. So there's no way I'm taking Daniel Jones at 70. 0%.
We'll see, folks. We will see. All right, we'll do
Zero.
it. I'm saying we'll see. Actually, we'll probably have to do a side bet, like a Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, Daniel Jones side bet or something, and everyone gets their horse. But yeah, I'm excited. I actually have Herbert right there. I actually have to check my top 150, but I'm pretty sure. It's funny. I say I have to check my top 150, and I literally have it open right next to me.
I would probably take Daniel Jones over Dak Prescott at this point.
I actually have it Trevor Lawrence, Herbert, Daniel Jones. 67, 68, and 7. 68, 69, and 70. So, but the thing is, if you look at ADP, Herbert's going 46th overall right now. So I'll never have Herbert. I'm never going to draft him at 46. Lawrence is going at 56, so I'll never get Lawrence there. I'm not going to draft him there. That's kind of the point here. Like, yeah, I'd rather have Lawrence if it was 1-1 and I was at pick 68. I would rather have Lawrence if he was available, but that's not usually the case. So that's why I'll end up more with Daniel Jones. I'd rather wait 2 rounds on Daniel Jones than draft Justin Herbert at 56 or 46.
Which is the second reason I won't have Justin Fields.
Yeah, and that's fine. Honestly, yeah, we all have our different opinions on that one. We'll see how that goes. But anyway, look at Tyler Lockett waiting patient. Poor Tyler Lockett. And let's get into Tyler Lockett. Everybody, I actually told an hour before the show, I said, Matt, we got to talk about Tyler Lockett. I have to make a switch because there's 2 questions we need to answer first. Number 1, JSN's in town. Obviously, like the offense as a whole is basically the same. Geno's back, same offensive line, same coordinator. The only thing that's really changed is JSN's there. So we have to ask ourselves, how much of an impact will this have? Well, I think the first thing is we have to understand it. This is unprecedented. There has never been a team that's returning 2 elite wide receivers that drafted a kid in the first round. It's never happened. So I looked into similar situations. First one that comes up is 2017 Falcons. They drafted Calvin Ridley. They had Julio Jones, Mohamed Sanu. Julio Jones the next season had a better points per game. Mohamed Sanu had the same amount of fantasy points per game. So not much of an impact. Then it was 2019 Dallas Cowboys. It was Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup. They drafted CeeDee Lamb. That's the season, remember, in 2020 when Dak got hurt after week 5. So are we really going to say, what would have happened if Dak played all 17 games? Or 16 games, we wouldn't know. But Amari Cooper had basically the same amount of points. Michael Gallup took a significant step back. The third one, of course, is 2020 Cincinnati Bengals with Jamar Chase, with T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. T. Higgins, actually, his points per game improved with Jamar Chase. Chase had a monster season, and Tyler Boyd went down. I guess my point here is wide receiver scoring as a whole. If you look at the top 3 weapons, went up 7 PPR points per game. So the top 3 receivers just produced more because they had better talent, which is obvious. So there was plenty of scenarios where the current receivers on the roster actually improved because the offense of a whole improved because they have more talent. So the other aspect of this is the Seattle Seahawks were one of the lowest teams in 3 receiver passing attempts. So what I mean that is when they had 3 receivers on the field, they ranked 27th in the NFL in pass attempts out of 3 wide receiver sets. Godwin, the 3 receiver, Marquise Goodwin, only had 42 targets. Will Dissly and Cody Parkinson combined for 72. Obviously, you could just see those guys getting their tight end targets cut in half. You can keep Noah Fant the same, and those targets could go to JSN without impacting Tyler Lockett and, of course, DK Metcalf. The other thing is Shane Waldron. So Shane Waldron comes from the Rams. If you look at the 2018 Rams, they had 3 remember the triplets they had? It was Cooks, Woods, Cooper Kupp. 2018, they averaged all 8 top 18 in points per game in PPR. They had a dominant season. Now, Kupp left a little, played half the season, but still, all 3 of those guys were fantasy relevant. And the reason why I do think, finally, the other nail in the coffin for this is that if you look at the other coaches that come from the McVay tree, the Rams, okay, you have the Bengals, and then you have the Vikings, Kevin O'Connell, then you also have Zach Taylor. All of them coached on that coaching staff. 3 of the 5 top teams in 3 receiver sets in passing last year were those teams. So the coaching staff he comes from, their base offense is 3 receiver sets, but they never had the 3rd receiver to do that. And I think they have that now. So I think that's why I'm confident that Tyler Lockett's not going to take a huge step back. The other aspect of this is that he was better than DK Metcalf on a per game basis last year, and we're only discounting Lockett. DK Metcalf's going 30 in the 30s right now, which blows my mind. Like, he was actually outside the top 20 in PPR points per game. We're expecting DK Metcalf to improve with JSN and Tyler Lockett take a huge step back, which doesn't make sense. But the last thing is the age. All right, so he's turning age 31. What does that mean for fantasy football? Well, over the last decade, there's been 11 wide receivers that averaged 14 PPR points per game in their age 30 season. On average, their next highest points per game after that age 30 season, they saw a 9% decrease in PPR points per game. So for Lockett last year, he was around 14.8 to 15, depending on what site you use in PPR. That's still about 13.5 PPR points per game. So that's still top 24 numbers. So Lockett, even if you take some regression because of his age, I still believe that he's going to give you low-end wide receiver 2 numbers, so that makes him a value at his wide receiver 29 ADP. I know that's a lot of info, but I wanted to give Tyler Lockett a shout-out, Matt. Quick thoughts about Lockett. Are you fading him because of JSN, because of the age, or are you in on him at 56th overall?
I love him because the mocks that I've done and the drafts that I've done and just watching JSN is moving up and Lockett is kind of staying in his sweet spot. Like you said, Metcalf is in the top 30 overall. I don't need him there. I'd take him if he dropped, but I don't need him in the top 30, 35. JSN, right? People, especially home league, right? Home league nerds love rookies. They want to make the splash in the draft. So they want to draft the guys that are going to make the big splash so they can say, I told you so. So you can have all the JSN you want. I'm not taking him. I'd rather take the discount and take Tyler Lockett.
You know what's funny? When I did my top 150, just because of the layout of things, I have Metcalf significantly higher too. Not significantly. I'm a lot closer. So just to give you perspective, Metcalf right now today, I have ranked 35th overall. I'm only 5 spots lower than his 30th ADP, right? Because if you look at the guys behind him, it's all the quarterbacks I talked about. It's like I have Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Fields, Burrow, TJ Hawkinson there. I'm like, I kind of want to take Metcalf. I think he's going to bounce back. So I don't want to lower him too much. But then, like, I say all this stuff, and I have Tyler Lockett right now at 56. So I'm 21 spots lower, and I'm trying to figure out a way to push them closer. But it's hard to convince yourself to get Lockett even higher because, yes, there are those worries. There are the age. There is things like that. And I know I've kind of counteracted that a little bit, but I do think that does cap his upside. So, I mean, I guess the question is, let's answer this question. We have at ADP, I'm just trying to find some good receivers here. Mike Williams or Tyler Lockett?
Probably Mike Williams moving into the slot. But again, I don't care. I've got a group of about 12 receivers. Mike Williams is one. Lockett's one. Godwin's one. Evans is one. Judy probably doesn't make the list. He's a little bit higher. But I've got the Hollywood Brown, who we had on the show. We were gonna talk about him a little bit earlier. There's a list of about 12 guys that I have no problem taking in the same zone that Lockett's going to be in. To me, they're all interchangeable. And so you could, if you read me one of those names, I'm going to say, yep, I could take one or the other. I don't care. DJ Moore is going to be a little bit higher than that. But yeah, Keenan Allen's probably going to be a little bit higher than that. But they're all that. If I can go, if hopefully my guys aren't listening. Well, hopefully they are, and whatever, right? We get more viewership. But if I change my strategy a little bit this year from wide receiver, and get like in the 8th spot, if I take Bijan, right, or I take the top wide receiver there, Diggs or CD or whoever, and then I get a running back coming back, then that list of 12 or 15 receivers that I have all clustered together, like you do your quarterbacks, I'll start just cherry picking one by one off the list. And I won't care who has them, right? If somebody takes one of them, that's no big deal. I've still got 11 or 12 or 13 left that I find are all in the same zone. Some of them are going to have a 200-yard game and 2 touchdowns. Others are going to have 90 and 2. It doesn't matter. They're all going to put up about the same points by the end of the year. And I know, you made fun of me. I took Mike Evans too high. I did that. I made that mistake. Now I've pushed him down in my rankings to that group that all has the kind of the same pedigree, if you will, the same fantasy pedigree. So Lockett and Mike Williams, same area for me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really tough when you get to that area because, like, I'm not low on Mike Evans. I have him 4 spots lower than ADP. I'm not, like, off on Mike Evans. It's just, like, I like continuity. I like the fact that Lockett is in a system. He's mastered this system now. Mike Evans is learning a new quarterback and a new system at the same time. So I just feel like that level of change is going to impact Mike Evans versus Tyler Lockett, who can go out there and just play. Like Tyler Lockett knows the offense like the back of his hand. He knows Geno Smith now very well. So I just like that continuity, which is why I lean that direction versus Mike Evans. But like you said, though, I don't think I care that much. Like I get the guys I want mostly because if you look at my top 150 versus ADP, it's a lot of -10, +10. So I'm like very different in that sense. So I always get the guys I want. But like you said, though, if you look at points per game, wide receiver like 18 to like 35 is like 0.1 difference when you go down. It's like it really doesn't matter because, like you said, it's all of it driven by those big monster games. So that's a good tidbit right there. I do agree with that. Let's see. We got one question here from Jamie. Jamie, we're gonna answer your question because we love you. Is there any three wide receivers going on a team earlier than the Seahawks? So he's asking basically, those are the 3. I would say no. I think the only ones that kind of compete a little bit are Quentin Johnston, but that's way later in that sense. But I think that's the only one that I could see going in the top like 200 right now.
Yep.
I think the other ones are
Philly and Miami don't have a third that's gonna compete.
I think the other ones are more, we don't know who to pick, right? So like Kansas City has like those guys kind of shoved together because there's no top guy. Like there's no top 50 wide receiver like DK Metcalf who has 2 other wide receivers going in ADP in the top 100 or even in like the top 150. So this is this is unprecedented. I'm telling you right now, this is a unprecedented situation. There has never been a time where a team had 2 elite wide receivers on the team the year prior and then drafted a number 1 pick and they all were on the team the next season. I've looked at it. It does not happen. So we're all learning this together, folks. I tried to give you the best examples possible, but it is not close. Like the other thing too was a lot of the cases that I found, they had one elite guy, like a Julio Jones type where he got like 170 targets and then number 2 was like 90. There was never a case where both guys are in like the 130 range like these guys were last year. So I'm excited to see what happens. I think Gallup and Cooper were probably the closest thing we got to it with CeeDee Lamb. And unfortunately, because Dak got hurt that season, we didn't see what the final result would have been. But, I still think it's fun. I still don't want to fade. I think Geno is probably the biggest winner out of everybody. We should be talking about Geno Smith and how he's a late round sleeper because, he's got these 3 great receivers now. And then on top of that, the offense, he's back again and he's got all that continuity. So I think that's probably the biggest takeaway. Maybe we don't get aggressive on the receivers. You get aggressive on Geno because he has all this talent. But Matt, any final thoughts about the must-have players or anything else you want to talk about before we close the show?
No, I'm good. I'm excited to get into it and more drafts. And I just posted my latest article, which was the second iteration of picking from the 4th spot. I did my first draft, a mock draft using the Razzball ADP, which was a mid-July date, and we took Cooper Kupp with the 1.04. I just did a redux of that draft with the current ADP, which is August 13th, I believe. And Austin Eckler moved up to number 4. And there's some surprises in there. So it's a quick read. There's some good names. Both names are included. The original draft pick from ADP and then the new draft pick based on the month of drafts under Razzball's belt. So good info out there. And you can find that out there on Twitter /X.
/X. Well, make sure you go follow Matthew Stiles at Stiles08 on Twitter, and go follow us at Razzball and Razzball NFL on Twitter /X. Make sure you jump over to Razzball.com. We have great writers dropping good stuff all off season long. We actually have some fun DFS stuff going out now for preseason as well. So go check it out on Razzball.com. Make sure you follow us across the board on TikTok and IG, and of course, subscribe to the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel. This is slowly becoming the NFL flagship, and the Sunday Live starts at you. I'm telling you right now, you're going to have 3 hours of us answering start-sit questions and providing as much knowledge before each game each week. So we're excited to bring that to you again in 2023. Once again, I'm your host, Bobby LaMarco. You can follow me at Bobby LaMarco on Twitter. I want to thank my co-host, Matthew Stiles. Stiles, come back again anytime. I'm excited to see you. We are out of here, folks.